Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Defining Dadbod. We're doing something just a little bit different today. I have my guest for my interview joined live, Mrs. Cammy Kennedy. Say hi, Cammy. What's up?
Hello.
Now, Cammy was up till 3 a.m. celebrating, not crazily, but celebrating a recent bunch of wins in life. And I'm a little more of a crazy morning person, so I'm asking a lot of her to come up to my level. So Air 5, Cammy, thanks for
Yes, I'm here.
Now, you guys who've been following Defining Dadbod for a while know that I don't have many ladies on the show, and it's not sexism in the least. It's called Defining Dadbod, and I don't purport to know much about the female experience outside of how it's been perceived by me as a guy. So I'm very thankful to have Cammy join me today. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff, but I want to give a quick internet introduction here. So Miss Cammy is previously a diet recovery expert, which is a pretty powerful term. I can't wait for you to tell us more about your story, Cammy. And now she's moving into the mindset realm around coaching high-achieving females. So I can't wait to hear your story here. But if you want to get connected to Cammy, her online signature is at cammykennedy.com. That's CAMYKENNEDY.com. You can also catch her on Facebook at Cammy B. Kennedy, B as in boy, and Instagram at Cammy Kennedy. Cammy, whoa, that was quite the introduction. Tell us a little bit about you and your superhero origin story, the 5-minute Cammy, how she got to be who she is today.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me on. This is pretty cool to be in your space because I know, like you said, you don't have a lot of females on here. So this feels pretty cool to kind of vibe and chat about health as a whole.
Heck yeah.
My undergrad degree was actually molecular cell biology. I was pre-med. I wanted to go to veterinary school. And then I started working as a in a veterinary hospital and didn't love it and had a passion for health and fitness. And my story was I got really heavily into wanting to compete in bikini and figure. And this was about 7 years ago, but I was obsessed with the way my body looked and my mindset was totally jacked up. I was in so much comparison. I was binge eating. I was depriving. I was over exercising. And that really culminated in 2013 with a back injury. And I ended up getting a bulging disc L5S1 from doing 3 hours of cardio a day and not listening to my body.
Oh, gotcha.
I gained 25 pounds in 2 months. And at that point, I really started to have an awareness over I should have really appreciated my body more when I was fit. Because then by the time I was 25 pounds overweight, I was like, wow, like I looked great. And so that's actually when I started my nutrition coaching business back in 2013. And I was helping women at that time with health and fitness. But this past year, I've really honed so much of what I do down to mindset and success coaching, because we can find a meal plan online. We can find a workout plan online, but why can't we follow through with it? Right.
Right.
Any coach that I had made it very cut and dry, like do this, eat this, do this, eat this. And if you're a perfectionist or a recovering perfectionist, like I was, I always felt like I was failing because if I had an extra bite of something, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst person in the world.
Right.
So it's really coming more of a place of self-acceptance and just like, you know what, today, this is what happened. How can I be better tomorrow? Or how can I be better my next meal? Or how can I get a 10-minute workout in, even though I couldn't get a 1-hour workout in? So it's totally shifting our mindset.
I love that. And without it being like, my day's ruined because I didn't do the 1-hour workout and now everything's crap. And so everything else can be crap too, right? That's like the binge eating mindset, right? I fell off the wagon. Who cares if I eat a whole jar of peanut butter?
Exactly. Yep.
So you brought up something really interesting and important there. And I just wanted to, I didn't intend to talk about this, but I love it. You brought up the concept that the cut and dry robot tyrannical meal plan approach to health and fitness works really well for certain personality types. And what you just said there was what we call in psychology conscientiousness, which is if you're a really high conscientiousness individual, that you're the person who notices when the socks are on the floor and it drives you bonkers till you go pick them up. But not everybody is the high conscientiousness person. And scrolling through my newsfeed recently, I saw an ad for this thing called Habit that like tests your genetics and your blood and to see how all this is working. And it's like, oh, it'll spit out the perfect program for you. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I've been in the industry for like 13 years. Most people know what to do and they just aren't doing it, or if they do it, they're doing it haphazardly. So you brought up a really interesting thought there, and I'd like to hear about how you're addressing that in your practice. How do you dive into the mindset piece for different personalities?
Yeah. Well, so I really hone in mostly on high achievers who tend to be perfectionists, right? So let's say you're looking at a life wheel, and I'm sure you're familiar with a life wheel. It's like you look at every area of your life, you rate it from a 1 to a 10. So that's actually where I start with my clients. And sometimes they're coming to me for nutrition and health, and they're like, I don't know why I can't work out. And I see that their career is maybe at 8 or 9, which is they're doing great in their career. Their relationship is at a 2. So I can't just be like, well, let's talk about nutrition. I actually have to say, well, what's going on with your relationship? Like, how can we start to have better conversations? How can we have empowering conversations? So you can't just look at nutrition and health as a single thing, because everything touches everything, as one of my mentors says. So we actually have to be open and available and willing to look at the other stuff that we may not want to look at. And so that's how I coach my clients.
I love that. Thank you for diving us just a little bit deeper into the way that you're coaching people. If you're just now joining us, this is Alex Van Houten with Defining Dadbod. I'm live with Ms. Cammy Kennedy, and we're talking about coaching the mindset in nutrition and exercise. So Cammy, you just went to Bali, and I understand that it's been a life-changing experience for you. We're going to talk about some intermittent fasting and male and female differences in just a second, but I wanted to hear from you about your Bali trip. So you went to Bali, apparently something life-changing and powerful happened there, and I want to hear more about that. So tell me about your Bali trip.
Sure. So I actually have been wanting to go to Bali for 3 years. So I think that's the power of intention. And everything kind of fell in place. I connected to the right people. I met somebody named Joel Brown, who has a podcast called Addicted to Success, and he was hosting a retreat in Bali. So I reached out, and it was an interview process, got accepted to it. And it was a large financial investment. I will say that. This is such an epic piece of the puzzle, because when we actually love ourselves enough and care for ourselves enough to invest in ourselves, that's when we make breakthroughs. So I think a lot of people, going back to the health and fitness space, they're not investing in themselves. They're like, well, I can work out on my own, or I can do this on my own. Yeah, you can. You totally can. But your mindset shifts when you fork out a chunk of money, because that's you now saying, like, I'm serious, I'm dedicated, I'm doing this, I'm going to show up for myself. And so that's exactly what happened just in that space. Me agreeing to put the money down was like, okay, I'm going to show up and do the work, and I'm going to show up, like I never have before. And so the best piece was it was a 4-day, it was called Master Your Influence. It was a 4-day business retreat, but it wasn't about, of course, it was about business and marketing, like on the last day, but the first 3 days were about ourselves, our inner mindset, the work.
I was going to say, your pictures, you're like in front of a beautiful waterfall.
Yes.
Like, that's not business.
Yes. No, I mean, I spent so many days crying, and I mean, it was just so beautiful. But the point is that if we want different results, we have to do something differently. We can't have a different life if we're trying to show up exactly the same as we are. So I showed up there as my former self, which did not have pink hair, by the way, because I came back with pink hair. And that's a reminder to me that I've committed to change. That's a reminder to me that I'm living into my future self. And so each day I'm like, okay, like old Cammy would have done X, Y, Z. Cammy that lives this other life, like this future life, does this. And so the investment piece, the showing up piece, and then the willingness to override old paradigms. Like, you've heard of a paradigm shift. Like a paradigm shift would be, for example, in health and fitness would be like, I can only eat low carb. That's the only way for me to lose weight. Or I can only do CrossFit. That's something that we've just told ourselves that may or may not be true. So if you're not getting results, you have to start questioning what it is you're doing and be open to be trusting somebody else or to trying something else that may actually be better for you.
So what were your top 3 takeaways from that trip itself?
So the first one, honestly, was relationships. I went there by myself, but I got connected to 35 beautiful people, male and female both. And so I think a lot of times we try to do things on our own, especially if we're high achievers. I can do it. I can do it better. I don't need anybody else. I don't want to rely on anybody else. The accountability and the growth that happens within a group is so huge, and you can't trade that for anything. So that's the one piece. The second piece, being in person, is also huge, because a lot of times we do a lot of stuff behind the computer. I like to do video with my clients because it's very similar, getting that face to face. And I now host retreats because that's part of my process too, is committing yourself, being in person and showing up and being vulnerable is huge. So those are my first two. And then my last one, I just think it has to do with mindset, because so it's funny because you said like, I'm not a morning person, which 2 years ago, actually my entire life for 30 years, I have not been a morning person. Okay. Like, you're probably the type that jumps out of bed and is like, yay, let's start the day.
Annoyingly.
And I jump out of bed and I'm like, I hit the wall, and I run into the wall and I'm like, I can't even see. So I stumble like a zombie in the morning. But in 2016, I decided that was a limiting belief. And luckily a friend of mine was like, hey, that's a limiting belief. Why don't you explore that? And so that goes back to relationship, having somebody to speak truth into your life. And so I just started claiming I'm a morning person. And then I started taking the actions that said I'm a morning person. And then for Bali, we had to give up caffeine because it was a caffeine-free retreat. So not only am I a morning person who now gets up at 5 a.m. for a 5 a.m. client, I am now a morning person without coffee. So obviously I'm back on coffee, but I did it for 30 days. And it was something I would never want to do. It was something that I wouldn't have chosen it for myself, but it was so powerful just to show that you can do anything when you decide to do it.
Man, that would shift my paradigm completely, because I love coffee, and I recently did my 23andMe, and my genetic predisposition is to be somebody who consumes more coffee than the average, by the way. So I can blame it on genes. But even that being said, it's such a powerful thing to say there are things in your life that you thought you couldn't do without, or that you thought you couldn't operate without. And suddenly you do them, and you're like, wait, I'm fine. I can do this. Not only can I do this, I can thrive and flourish doing it, which is pretty powerful. If you're just joining us, I'm joined by Miss Cammy Kennedy. This is Alex Van Houten with Defining Dadbod. We're talking about her trip to Bali. And Miss Cammy Kennedy, I want to talk to you. I don't know why I'm calling you by your first and last name, by the way. I need a nickname. We're going to call you Red.
Okay. Well, hold on. Make sure it's pink. It's not red. So that's
sorry.
It's pink.
Pink.
Pink is my new color after Bali. I'm calling in the feminine energy.
Nice. All right. So pink. With your feminine energy, I want to tackle a topic that you are a very prominent, at least in the fitness industry, expert in, and that is intermittent fasting. That's something that many of my viewers and listeners regularly ask about, and many people regularly practice. Now, no, most of my demographic are men, and so there's a difference in the way intermittent fasting affects men versus women. But I wanted to hear, if for the listeners, if you wouldn't mind, could you define the concept or tool of intermittent fasting? And since you're working in the mindset world right now, how have you seen intermittent fasting shift clients' mindset toward nutrition?
So intermittent fasting, really, there's two strategies that I know of, and the whole purpose is to reduce your calorie intake on a few days. So, or to have an eating window. So the first way to do it is you would eat normally for 5 days, and then you would do 2 fasted days. So that's I think it's called 5 and 2. And then your other one, which is the one I prefer, because I like to train, and for me, it's hard to train completely fasted. So the other one I like to do is every day, a 16-8. So what that would look like is you are fasting for 16 hours, you're eating for 8 hours. And so, for example, a schedule that I like to use with my clients, because it works pretty well, is you'll eat from noon until 8 p.m. and then you'll fast during that window from 8 p.m. until noon, and you'll get your workout in, in the morning, which is supposed to metabolize more fat, increase growth hormone. So it has a lot of positive benefits from the science, from the research. But what's interesting, because you mentioned the mindset piece, back in the day when I was doing diet recovery, I was a huge proponent of balanced eating. 6 meals a day, the whole typical carbs, fats, protein, very balanced. And I actually had a course called The Better Method, and I talked about, if it fits your macros, I talked about intermittent fasting. And I approached it from the mindset perspective of, if you're using intermittent fasting as a deprivation tool and you're feeling like you're actually starving yourself, then I would not recommend doing it. And that's where I was for the longest time. I would have never considered it at all because number one, I love breakfast, right? I'm like, I love breakfast. I want to get up and eat it. Number two, I never felt like I could train fasted because I I rely on carbs so much.
Yeah.
And then number three, I was afraid that it would cause me to binge eat after I started doing it. So I've made my own personal mindset shifts around it. And then I coach my clients on it. And I would say it's not for everybody because it depends on what your hours are, how you train, what your mindset is around food. But I will recommend it if it looks like it's going to fit their schedule and their lifestyle.
Absolutely. I love everything you just said. And it's such a powerful thing to think of it from, we have a lot of crazes in the fitness industry that just take people by the seat of the pants and, drag them along for 8 weeks. And they're like, yeah, this is the new best thing. And I could go on and on about those for a while. I'm sure you could too. But one of the most powerful things that you just said in there was, how is this activity or tool affecting your mindset? Because if it's negatively affecting you, if it's negatively putting a damper on your day, the rest of the day, and that's happening to you for weeks and weeks, this is probably not a good thing. Like, it's just probably not, So I'll use an example just in my life. Intermittent fasting is a tool that I use probably 2 to 4 times a week, mostly because of my work schedule. And it's nice for me to know that there's a way I can practice going without food until about 10 a.m., 12 p.m., somewhere in there. Sometimes I get up at 4 or 5. So that's a good half of my day. It's nice to know that I don't have to struggle to try to fit food in at the right times, so to speak. And so it can be a powerful tool for me. However, if I committed to intermittent fasting all the time, then I would miss out on one of the most important times in my week, and that is breakfast on Friday morning with my son. He and I love French toast, scrambled eggs, and I'll drink the coffee. He doesn't drink the coffee. But we go out and we go hiking and we get French toast and scrambled eggs. If I was so hardcore about intermittent fasting that I was like, well, I'm going to go and he's going to eat French toast and I'm going to just sit there and sip my coffee, like, come on, Dad, you're missing it. You're missing a time to be able to engage with your son and share something just awesome. And I don't know where you're at about French toast, but I do all kinds of things in my week to make sure that French toast can be a part of my week in a positive way. So that's how big of a deal it is. But anyway, you bring up the idea that intermittent fasting can be a powerful nutrition tool. The research backs it up, growth hormone, testosterone. We'll talk about male-female differences in a second, but the mindset piece is so important, and that permeates the whole of health and fitness. If the practice is ruining your mindset, either one, you could practice it differently, or two, it might not be a practice for you to begin with. Would you agree with that?
Yes, 100%. And I love that you make French toast a priority. I love breakfast, totally. So I like to do pancakes. I like to do waffles. I like to do everything, one of everything at breakfast. And I feel like that is really important.
It's hugely important. It's hugely important. And I know you have a history in this, so don't take this the wrong way, but go follow her on Instagram. The pancakes aren't catching up with her in a bad way. All right. Like, Cammy's in fantastic shape. So that topic being said, let's talk about the male-female difference here, because there's something really powerful about your practice. And it's that you have taught intermittent fasting in the past, especially with clients, to be done in a very specific way to hold off negative metabolic responses. And what I mean by that is, this is biology, this isn't sexism. But if we were 10,000 years ago, cavemen and cave women, well, it'd be more like 20,000, I guess. 10,000 would be agricultural farmers. But 20,000 years ago, if I'm in a cave and my family's starving, then the man gets a metabolic boost to go kill a mammoth and drag it back to camp. I don't know, maybe mammoths weren't around at 20,000, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, get a metabolic boost to drag it back to camp. Growth hormone goes up, testosterone goes up, everything's, really jamming. But if I am a childbearing age female and the tribe is starving, then my metabolism starts to kind of slow down a little bit, because the kids still got to eat. And my body can deal with that, but their bodies are developing. And so what happens when we look at the literature is most of the positive things that people have to say about intermittent fasting, like going without food for 12 hours, they're actually not studying women very heavily. There's 3 studies that I know of, and they're all pregnant Ramadan people, which is a very different thing. But anyway, but for females, you have had several female case studies with positive results, and I've seen people that I've spoken with and whatnot that are female that have had positive results with intermittent fasting, but they're practicing it in a very, very specific way. And I wondered if you wouldn't mind sharing, kind of the caveats in there, because it's not just 18 hours without food and 6 hours eating. There's something very specific that you're doing within those 18 hours that I think is really powerful for you to highlight, especially for the ladies here.
Yes. And I want to make a point too that I don't consider intermittent fasting a diet, especially for the females, because some females have a history of restricting calories. So I don't want them to think like, because I had one client specifically who was like, I'm doing fasting today, which really meant she ate too much last night and she's punishing herself by not eating in the morning. So I want to be really clear that going back to mindset. Exactly. I'm like, don't pretend like it's fasting whenever you're really just over exercising and depriving yourself. So that's not what we're talking about here.
Well said.
What we're talking about is actually having a clear strategy and being open to how your body's functioning. So for example, if I eat breakfast right now at 7 a.m., I'm not just going to automatically push the window back to noon, right? I'm just going to push my breakfast back to like 8 and see how I feel. So I would do that over a course of a couple of weeks where I'm just pushing my breakfast back. So that's the first thing. I think people jump in. They're like, I'm doing intermittent fasting. They're treating it like a diet, which I do it like once or twice a week. Like I'm not hardcore about it. When I can do it more often, I'll do it. If I can't, I won't. And I'm not going to beat myself about that. But the piece that I use, which I actually don't know if I could do traditional intermittent fasting, because traditional intermittent fasting is like you can't have anything. Like it's just like coffee with butter in it, that's all you're having. And water. And like maybe BCAAs if you can. But so what I use is I actually use a system that's designed to work on the cellular level, that's going to support a cellular detox. And so I'm using that overnight. And it's basically aloe vera based juice. And you can do the research on aloe vera. It's very good for gut health. It also helps with toxins because there's so many toxins in our body. The thing about toxins is they're stored in our body fat. So if your body is highly toxic, your body wants to hold on to the body fat to protect yourself from the toxins. So it's not trying to get rid of body fat unless you can start to get rid of the toxins. So I've combined intermittent fasting with this cellular cleansing piece. And so I'll be doing that every 2 to 3 hours. I'll always have BCAAs. I'll always have some type of caffeine. And then I do have these little whey protein like snacks. They're like little bite snacks. I'm able to actually use these tools during my day to get me to that noon. And then that noon, I'll break my fast with a really high quality superfood shake that has all the trace minerals in it to make sure that I'm refilling my body up after that long fast. Because I think it really is important too, what you eat right when you break your fast, so that you're not just running in and binge eating a whole breakfast and getting pancakes. You want to replenish what you've lost during that time. So being strategic and saying, you know what, I do want the pancakes, but I'm going to have whatever it is. I use a superfood shake. I'm going to have my superfood shake first, then I'll go have the pancakes, so that you're not building up an unhealthy habit, which would be depriving and binging. So you've got to be looking at it from the health perspective and not from the like, how can I drop weight really fast perspective.
Oh, man. Lady after my own heart here, because this, what you're talking about here is the idea of, I wish there was a word that was not quite fasting, but not quite normal either. Like if there's like a scale of fasting is water and nothing, and not fasting is everything else.
Yes.
What's the word?
I usually call it nutritionally supported.
There you go.
Nutritionally supported fasting.
That's sexy. I'm going to write that down. Nutritionally supported. I'm not kidding. That's really good. Nutritionally supported fasting. That's a really powerful concept, is the idea that, okay, fine. It's not like your normal eating schedule. It's a time when you're not thinking necessarily about when your next meal's coming, and you don't have to worry about it till a specific time. And you made a really important point of breaking yourself into that. You don't go, oh, I usually eat breakfast at 6. Now I'm going to eat it at 12. That's intermittent fasting. Like you kind of slowly work yourself into that. It's kind of like setting a bedtime. You don't go, well, I normally stay up to like 1 or 2, but tonight I'm going to try to go to bed at 9. It's just not going to happen for you. Cortisol is a slow moving train. So there's that piece, but that you explain, you're not depriving yourself in that period of time. It's nutritionally supported in the sense, especially from a female perspective, you're giving your body what it needs in drip form fashion, not overboard. And then you're breaking back into your normal eating schedule intelligently, so that the blood sugar is not doing this number, and you're not riding the energy roller coaster, and you're also not in the binge mindset of food. And so hearing all that, I love where you're coming from, and I appreciate your spirit in that space. What kind of beneficial results have you seen with your clients who take on this nutritionally supported fasting regimen for themselves?
I usually will use this whenever they hit a plateau. And I love it because you know how good it feels to wake up and your stomach looks a little flatter? So it kind of has this positive reinforcement to be like, dang, I did that for one day and I feel great. Like my stomach looks flatter, my digestion is better, my energy is actually better. It's really weird. I'm sure you feel the same. Like your energy is sometimes better when you don't have breakfast, which is counterintuitive to what we've been taught forever. We're taught to eat oatmeal or like frosted flakes for breakfast, right? Like get your Wheaties in. And so that was a paradigm shift for me, because I was that person, my eyes opened and I wanted breakfast right now. Like I wanted food in my mouth when I woke up. So for me, I'm always pushing my mindset and my limitations. Just like I'm becoming a runner this year because I never was. Like it's a fun thing to say, look at that. I thought I couldn't do it and I did. And so if anybody's at a plateau point or they've been doing the same thing, like let's say somebody's been doing low carb forever, which we know is proven to just drop your metabolism super low. Maybe you try this 1 or 2 days a week and you're going to find out you get to eat more food in a shorter amount of time. So that to me is fun versus spacing out all my meals. And I'm more satisfied at those meals versus eating 300 calorie meals every 2 or 3 hours, which kind of leaves me hungry and like ready for the next meal, which can lead also into some food obsession as well.
Well, not only food obsession, but also like the mechanical kind of eating. I hear it from people in the bodybuilder and physique competitor space all the time. I hate my food. I'm sick of my food. I'm just mechanically putting, calories in my body and not very mindfully thinking about, oh, this tastes really good. I really enjoy this. That's like I'm typing on my computer, sticking food in my mouth thing while I'm trying to, meet my scheduled program, so to speak. So I love that thought process there. Now, if you're just joining us, it's Cammy Kennedy and Alex Van Houten on Defining Dadbod. We're talking about the mindset around nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle change. Cammy told us about her Bali trip, which was fantastic, gave her a lot of insight into some things that she just shared with us. And then also we've been talking about intermittent fasting, which I could go on forever and ever with you about. I like you. You've got a great head on your shoulders and helped a lot of people with that. But I don't have all morning, and neither do you. So I want to shift the conversation just a bit to talk about your podcast, which I understand has recently gone through a little bit of a restart, so to speak, Fit, Faith, Freedom. And I understand you can find that on iTunes. Tell me about what you're doing with your show and what you're hoping to do in the coming months, because you've got some great stuff going on.
Thank you so much. So originally, and I think this is so key, my podcast is about mindset ultimately. And I originally launched it and called it Rule Breaker Lifestyle. And to me, that was such a I'm going to break the rules. I'm going to do this. Like, it was so aggressive. And I ended up going on a mission trip to Costa Rica. And again, that was another life-changing thing that happened to me this year. And I came back from that mission trip and, I mentioned the pink hair, like I'm calling it my feminine. It's more about just accepting instead of fighting everything. Because I've always been fighting. So I rebranded it, call it Fit, Faith, Freedom. And really, we talk about mindset, we talk about intention, we talk about faith, we talk about people that are getting free from limiting beliefs. Because I still talk to people, and I'm sure you see it too, I wish I could look like you. I wish I could have your life. I'm like, you can. You just decide to do it. Like, and so it takes a while to get to that space, but that's what I'm there to show women and men and anybody. Like, all it takes is intention, and then from intention you have action, and you will get to where you want to be. Like, I set an intention 3 years ago to go to Bali. I set an intention maybe 2 or 3 years ago to start a podcast, and it's here. So I just think people are not believing in themselves enough. So it's building that self-belief and really trusting the process and realizing you do not have to be perfect. In fact, you know, I could have looked at my podcast rebrand as a failure. I could have been like, oh, I did this and I have to rebrand it. But it's like, you know what? I put it out there. I took action. I found out I needed to rebrand it. And that's how we learn. We take action. We learn from it. So I think a lot of people out there are just afraid of failure, and they're always wanting to be perfect. And to that, one of my good mentors, Jill Coleman, remember the first thing she said to me when I met her? She said, ready, fire, aim, 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 aim. So you take the action and then you figure it out as you go, which is kind of what I've been doing my entire life. So
I love that.
It works well.
It sounds like I would get along with that mentor. I generally say that I like to leap before I look, or you touch the wet paint before you read the sign. I don't know if that's always the best way to go about it, but action always seems to be a good way to learn iteratively. So, hey, I just wanted to mention, by the way, the irony of changing your podcast from the aggressive rule breaking thing to the acceptance, and then thinking about the rebrand as a potential failure. Like, you broke the rules not to rebrand while you were trying to shift yourself from the rule breaking to acceptance. I think that's really funny, but I've got a strange sense of humor. So kudos to you for living your truth in that respect.
Yeah, it really is about being true to you. And so I'll actually ask myself daily 2 questions daily. The one is, what can you do that's bigger and bolder than yesterday? And then the second one is, what can you do to be true to yourself, either in this moment? Usually I have to check in this moment. Like, how am I feeling about this moment? What can I do to be true to myself? Like, saying yes to something that you don't really want to say yes to, and then not being afraid to be like, actually, no, I don't want to do that. I'm sorry I said yes right away. I don't want to do that. And I actually did that last night. Like, somebody asked me to pick something up and I was like, sure. And then I was like, actually, no, I don't want to. And that's okay. So it's that experience of trusting yourself and being true to yourself that kind of permeates everything that I do.
I love that. You guys can check that out on iTunes, Fit, Faith, Freedom with Miss Cammy Kennedy. Cammy, I have a question that I ask every person that I interview as we're closing this down here, and would love to hear from you. We've been, following each other's stuff back and forth on Facebook for a little bit here. My question to you, and I love the female perspective on this, what does the phrase defining dad bod mean to you?
It's so funny because I've been thinking about this question the whole time. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to say. So the best part is when I don't know what I'm going to say. So I'm going to take it probably different than what you would expect. I feel like in the fitness space specifically, people are so physique focused, and that's not the most important thing. Since going to Bali with a bunch of men who are just so supportive and so into personal growth and so into learning about themselves and into communication, I think defining dad bod is about the whole package. It's not about just what you look like. It's about showing up for your son to have French toast. It's about being able to have a conversation with your wife. It's about the whole package, not just focused on, I'm going to eat 5 ounces of steak today and I'm going to do heavy squats, right? Like, with the bro mentality, I think shifting more into personal growth, like read a book, listen to a podcast, like get your mind, because the mind is sexier than the body, honestly. Like, if you get somebody with a good mind that you can have a good conversation with, that is what it's all about. So for anybody who's just focusing solely on aesthetic gains, maybe shift gears and start listening to a podcast whenever you're lifting, or find something new that you can enrich and start to enrich your relationships in your life, because that's going to lead to fulfillment. Having the sexy hot body is ultimately not going to lead to fulfillment. Dude,
I love that. You sure you didn't write all that down before you came on here to that was good. That was good. What's powerful is I ask every interviewee this, and we're on episode 56 right now. So we've been through a lot of conversations. When I ask, everybody has a little bit of a different flavor, but you kind of answered it in the, I want to say the same way. You answered it in your own unique and authentic way. But the idea being that defining dad bod has so much more to it than the bod. Mm-hmm. But the bod is the central place where the emotions and spirituality and physicality of what we do with ourselves every day kind of really come together so that we can show up for our community and ourselves and our families and our businesses and whatnot. So high five to you, chick. Boom. I love your definition. That's awesome. Cammy, do you have anything else you'd like to share and leave our viewers and listeners here with before I call it a day and outro us?
I would just ask anybody if they're looking to hop on a call. Like, that's what I do. I give people free coaching calls. So they can reach out to me on Instagram at Cammy Kennedy and just say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. I love just hopping on a call, getting to know a little bit more about you and seeing how we can make a shift in an hour. Because I think some people think that transformation is going to take a long time, whenever you can actually decide to make a transformation in 1 hour, in one day, and start living your life in that way as well.
So powerful. Guys, if you're just joining us, we're finishing up, so go back to the beginning of this video and check it out. Thank you to our live viewers who have joined us live. This has been Alex Van Houten with Defining Dadbod and Miss Cammy Kennedy of Fit Faith Freedom. And you can catch her at CammyKennedy.com. That's CammyKennedy.com. And then at her Facebook at Cammy B Kennedy or her Instagram at Cammy Kennedy. I'll put all those links in the comments and show notes. Thank you so much, Cammy, for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Alex.
If you haven't already, stop by patreon.com/definingdadbod to support the continued growth and distribution of the Defining Dadbod movement. And by investing in what we're doing here, you can touch the lives of many people who are hearing this message, making changes, and making a difference. Go to patreon.com/definingdadbod and join the movement. This has been Alex Van Houten with Defining Dadbod. Until next time, guys, kick butt, take names.